Hey guys, I'm excited to announce this. This is the final completed release of the Gothic Castle. This is the last two levels. You're seeing us navigate through this. I've got Zephyr with me today, and we're going to walk you through everything that's in this release and walk you through some of the other special things that we're doing now. New macros, new combat, some modules, some other things that are going to help you as a DM sort of already have some things in your back pocket when you're prepping for your next game. You're looking at a room that dynamically changes with macros, and as it changes colors, the destination of its teleport changes. You're looking at some of the crypts and things that we've introduced in other releases now finally put together with effects and really to make a very immersive, very dynamic environment. And if you're playing Curse of Strahd or you're playing some other kind of similar castle, this is undoubtedly, from everything I've seen, this is the best castle that's on the market today. So hopefully you guys enjoy this, and as an extra treat, I've also taken all of my ships and I've created new versions of them. These are prefab versions that are all done with levels, the new levels module. And so here's the airship, there's the frigate, there's even versions with no cannons for those of you who've been asking for that. And the idea is you can now play these very dynamic maps really anywhere. And we've done some other things like the granary that you're seeing here, more maps that you'll see in the future that are multi-level. So let's jump into this whole release and hopefully you guys enjoy it. So Zephyr, with all that, tell me, walk us through what's new with this new release. Obviously, we've got the last two sub levels. There's been some changes and some enhancements to some of the levels above, but yeah, go ahead and walk us through what to expect with this release.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the first level, we had a few different encounters, and now there's some more like story tie-ins to that. So for example, we have these shadows that appear on the first level. Now that you can actually go down further into the lower level here, so we'll go on to B1. And now that we can actually go down further, there's now an encounter that has like more of the shadows, and there is flavor text describing what happened. So these are the like kind of tortured souls of the guards that kind of tried to rebel against the lord of the castle when he first kind of gave in to vampirism, etc. And that's why they're haunting all of these lower areas. And that's kind of like giving a little thematic update to how to go through the castle there.
That's
And
great.
we've got a lot of and so we've got a lot of great story tie-ins there and a lot of great new rooms. One of my favorites is this Hall of Bones that you put together. And I've tried to kind of do a variety of different encounters in here. So you'll notice this says a game at dinner, and I thought it would be amusing. Like you have this really macabre dining hall and everything, and if you run this quick encounter, you'll notice that there are wraiths, and they look like they're seated at the table, and the description is them playing a game of dice and everything. So maybe if you're the GM, you actually want this to not necessarily be a combat encounter unless the players disrupt the game, or maybe you do want the wraiths to just immediately try and kill your party. It depends on how you're running it and how prepared your party is. So I try to have a different variety going on there.
No, that's great. And some of these rooms, like the room you just came out of, that's all destroyed, that has an alternative that's a clean version of it. So really meant for being able to take over a space and renew it, or just entirely different storytelling altogether. But we'll show this a little bit later, like some alternatives of this, like this room, for example. But these turned out great.
Yeah, absolutely. I love all these rooms, and the cleaned up versions are awesome for future releases and future projects where we can do the restored versions of castles, etc. And if we come into this room, so this is normally kind of like a Chamberlain's office. And so something really cool about quick encounters that I explored a little bit is if we're running this quick encounter, so I can see it because I'm the GM, but it will actually preserve whether you have tokens hidden or not. And so kind of the story I have here is that, so if this is like the Lord of the Castle's steward, then maybe he's having a conversation with the party, telling them that they should either give up or they should just leave, something like that. And if it doesn't go super hot, then this dragon statue actually is a real dragon that has been staring the party down.
Great.
Start a combat that way. So I tried to really have some variety, which was fun to come up with.
Love it.
Just like it wouldn't be some Gothic medieval castle without a bunch of different secret doors around, and so that's where some of these other secret passages are. And we get into the really interesting stuff is with a lot of the traps and some of the automation that we have going now on the lower levels.
And by the way, that office that you were just in was one of Abominable Rob's creations. His level of detail is just off the charts with these.
It is incredible. Definitely all of his like wall decorations are very inspirational. And I've got a couple other things to highlight later that were very much inspired by him. So again, multi-level token getting us everywhere we need to go. And there's a few fun things here. So this room is really awesome that Baileywiki put together and has the Brazier going on. If you're familiar with Curse of Strahd, you'll know there's a similar room in that castle. And so what we've actually done is set up a macro that will actually allow you to change the teleport in this room.
Wow.
On this Brazier room. Something that's really awesome here with this new macro is if you click on that, you'll notice that we have all these destinations. And something that really takes it to the next level for me is being able to change the color of it. So it will actually reflect where you're going.
Wow.
And the first time your party comes in there, they probably don't know it's going to teleport, but then once it's active, then you can drag in the teleport macro and they'll actually be able to teleport. So if we click on that, unless my characters disappeared, and now they're up here.
Oh man, that's some next level stuff. I think Ripper helped you develop that macro, right?
Yeah, so all of this amazing macro shenanigans that I've put together for this one has been with a enormous amount of help from Ripper.
Who he happens to also be the developer behind Better Roofs and Levels, which we do a lot of coverage on because we've been using it heavily. So that's great.
Yeah, it's safe to say that there's a massive amount of this castle that would not be possible without Ripper, either in his capacity as a module developer or macro wizard. So beyond the Brazier room, we'll get into some of the fun torture things in a minute. So as you leave the landing that leads into the Brazier room and everything, you get to this hallway. And something that I really like, a lot of classic dungeon crawls and everything include a good old gelatinous cube that pops up to start chasing the players down a hallway.
I love it.
Yeah, I always think that trope is really fun, and I think it's really useful as a level designer or a GM, because then your players are a lot less likely to pay attention for the really interesting traps that you've laid, like a slide that might appear.
Oh, wow.
And you'll notice that there was a wonderful splashing sound, and we are actually now in some waterlogged dungeons. So we have the trap macro that's been updated to work with 0.8. And there was this nice satisfying splash that got us down here. And that's another macro from some community members. Joe Ninja and Ella's Rida actually developed a upgraded version of the walking water macro that has entrance and exit sounds and varies the footsteps as you walk around. So,
oh, it's great. It's a pretty satisfying wet sound.
Yeah, it just adds so much to having that variety there, and especially the entrance and exit sounds I really like. Another thing I wanted to introduce here was, again, I'm really into the idea of encounters that aren't necessarily, don't have to be combat encounters. And so here I wanted to introduce, there's the classic trope of werewolves versus vampires kind of thing. And if the Lord of the Castle is a vampire, maybe he's not super happy with these lichens. So there's were-rats and werewolves here in the prisons with you when you come down the slide. Yeah, so you could either potentially try to collaborate with them and maybe they'll help you take down the Lord of the Castle, or maybe they had been servants of the Lord of the Castle who is now not such a big fan of them and they're trying to get back in his good graces. So maybe these werewolves and were-rats come with you for a little bit and then they stab you in the back. when they get a chance, it seems favorable to them.
And the idea is that this whole tunnel system's flooded, right, in this area?
Yep. So you've got this whole wing of cells over here where we came down the slide. And this area I decided not to have prisoners in, but thought it would be cool to have more of those gray oozes. I really like the idea of stealthy creatures under the water. And so we've got another encounter over here, but the whole area is flooded. And making our way down the hallway, we get to this really incredible torture chamber that you put together.
Yeah, and it's designed to have a dry version of it as well to use in different scenarios. But yeah, there's a couple of things going on here between, you know, the tile, special tile up top. There's some, you can't really see it in this video too well, but there's some subtle animation on the water. And then you've got that balcony up above to serve as sort of a tactical. It's like an observation balcony where the Lord of the Castle can watch whatever torture's going on. But you've got, you know, other things around the room that could be interesting, like Iron Maiden and stuff like that. But it looks like you've made another interesting encounter here.
Yeah, I was really inspired by like Iron Maiden coming open and all of these different cage doors. So then I thought it would make a lot of sense to have kind of these extra soggy zombies and ghouls in here trying to eat you once you got into the ring. Speaking of that balcony, so as Baileywiki was mentioning, it is like levels enabled. So if I go up 10 feet, then I can actually get up onto this balcony. So if I have fly or something like that, probably more likely jumping down from the balcony into the pit. And I really like this touch with the curtains here. Just that little like peeking through is really nice, even though it doesn't obstruct your movement. And then when we come off the balcony, then we go right back to this Brazier room, and you can see there's this little outline of a macro, and that's the genius that you came up with to really set up this balcony with levels. So if we did manage to make it past that gelatinous cube and the trap there, we can make our way down the hallway and come out into these really large catacombs. And there's a bunch of crypts everywhere, and we can show those off later. Made a lot of different varieties of both crypt interiors and their walls to really make it feel like there's a cavern and like there's bats and stuff living down here. And some of these encounters reflect that. So open that up, you can see there's a variety of vampire spawn and wraiths. And something that I think is interesting for adding texture to this area is you've got a mixture of corporeal and incorporeal undead. So while you might alert all the undead at once, some of them are going to have to bang down their own doors to be able to get at you, while others are just going to float right through the doors. So that's an interesting way to have like more creatures in an encounter without necessarily overwhelming the party immediately, because you can kind of taper that experience and add some urgency to it as well. We've got, this is another one of Abominable Rob's great creations here, is this really nice crypt for the Lord of the Castle's brother.
And like we showed off in the last release, those coffin lids, the coffins are entirely removable, or just the lids are removable if somebody wanted to put something in there. That's where using something like Moulinet to drop in treasure, glowing sword, or a body, you know, using Forgotten Adventures assets can really help a GM sort of storytell here. There you go. So you turn on quick edit mode, and that lets you manipulate these pieces here. You've got to open up some of those crypt doors. I mean, you got to show us some of these, glowing candles and.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with making a bunch of these different ones, and I also like perhaps maybe you want to leave the denizens in there and have the party encounter that. But I created a few different varieties, and so like we've got candles and everything. Like maybe it's like an altar or something like that. And we've got all kinds of different, like empty, there's very hard to see, it's so dark, but there's different crypts and graves themselves, some glow, and actually the glowing crypts have the more dangerous enemies living in them. And so just try to have a nice variety of different things so you can tell a different story on the fly with these different pieces. So like there's a broken coffin, what does that tell about that particular story? So that even if there's not specifically a written description of each area, that you've got enough to go off of to kind of improv something on the spot if you need to.
I have to say the detail in the floor and the artwork is very immersive and very interesting. This is way more than what we've normally seen with, most maps and castle maps. This is really, really impressive.
One of the like central features down here is this really massive crypt down to the graves of the king and queen. So they're not the lords of the castle, they're like ancestors or something like that. And one thing I really like here that you've created is this great like glowing light effect to represent a like magical barrier that prevents people from passing.
Yeah, and there's a wall there, an invisible wall, just to enforce that barrier. Let the GM decide who gets through it.
Yeah, exactly. So you can kind of have your own parameter for who is worthy and who's not worthy, and you can, as a GM, manually move them over the barrier. If you did want to say like, oh, well, you're all worthy, or that the party disabled it somehow, you can turn on a quick edit and just get rid of this wall really quick.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got some options for you. That also brings me to another good point here. If I turn on these map notes, I do have sprinkled throughout this whole castle. You'll notice them by their purple color, these different little GM notes, and some of them are books, some are traps, and some are just various icons to kind of give you a feel for what's going on, that it has some explanations. So here we're talking about that barrier again, so that you know how to handle it as a GM. So that hopefully, whether we were able to cover everything in this video or not, that there's enough information there that you can run through this and have no problems. So I definitely recommend going through with your map notes on first to see where all of them are.
Yeah, you even linked to the macro there, so I don't have to go dig for it. That's great.
Yeah, exactly. You just click on it and boom, quick edit's going, click on it again, it's off. So you don't have to have it on your hotbar or anything if you're not used to doing that.
The GM just has to remember to import those macros into the world.
That's actually another awesome thing with Scene Packer, is that now we can actually have all of these macros import automatically for you. So
amazing.
So that's another great compelling case for having Scene Packer installed, because then we can automate a lot of these things for you and you don't have to remember to import them. It just works right out the box.
Brilliant.
So, yeah, another great zoom down here. Another really cool feature is there's this big spiral staircase that carries up all the way from here on this lowest level of B2 all the way up to level 4, which is kind of like the spires and the towers. And we'd previously shown off a levels version of that. There's now a multi-level token version that's a little bit easier to navigate as a GM and will work better on less beefy machines. And so there's some descriptions there, and as you go up the stairs, you'll actually hear bats at certain times of the day. That's a really cool feature in 0.8. Yeah, and that's something that I love about 0.8 of us being able to set darkness ranges for sounds now. And so we can actually you'll only hear the bats from like dusk until dawn and not during the day. So that's a really neat like little bit of flavor. And there's another one of those notes that kind of explains why that is, that they travel through the shaft to be able to get outside to go hunt and feed. And then there's a appropriate quick encounter for that as well.
When we get into the multi-level prefabs, like the ships that I've kind of re-engineered with levels, I did a lot of that sound engineering there too, so that it's different ambiance in the day and night. And just the fact that we get to do that now is great.
And here we're moving into kind of the companion crypt. And as I'm a GM, you can see that there is another one of these destinations for the Brazier teleport. So this is one of the spots your players can dump out in. Just on the subject of the map notes that are all around giving you kind of information, the Brazier room one here is right above, and there's that teleport one that we have to move in for our players to actually be able to use the room. But if you click on that, just like the quick edit one, we've got the macro right here, and it'll bring up that menu. So you can do that. If you are wanting to add your own custom destinations, if you add it to your hotbar or just go into your macros, then I do have these little templates for if you want to create more teleports and add additional colors. It's got some instructions in there for you, so you can add your own destinations. So if we go back up to this room up here from the lower levels. This is the same staircase that kind of goes through levels 1, 2, and 3, ending up there on the ramparts. But you can also stop off here, and this is the first basement level. And we've got an elevator here. You can kind of see a little bit of a hint there. And if you step through here, it plays this really great sound effect. And you'll notice that my player's been whisked away. And again, there's a context note about that. But if we're up here on level 3, you will notice that now the doors are locked and we are up on level 3. So your players will hear this loud thud, clanging noise of a counterweight dropping down and launching the elevator up with them in it and locking the doors. And just like we had all those nice secret doors before, there is a secret door for this elevator that's got some descriptions and tells you where things go. And after the trap is sprung, you can have them look and see if they find a way out. They can either find a way to pry the doors open and be able to exit that way and come into here on this 3rd floor near the belfry and everything. Or they can find a access hatch in the ceiling, in which case you can drag this macro to climb, or this map note to allow them to climb up and out. And that kind of segues nicely to, we've redone the 4th level of the castle to be multi-level token friendly. There's a lot going on here, but there's labels indicating the different sections of these spires and what they connect to. So right here, we're at the north towers in the guest quarters, and that connects directly to the level 3. And we can see our characters come up here from this trapdoor. If we turn on our notes again, there's another note about the elevator trapdoor. So since they've already seen it, then you can move that here so they can move back and forth between the elevator. Probably not helpful unless they've learned how to open the doors, but it's an option for them. And then in terms of up here, it's pretty similar to the levels version, just now it's a lot more performant for lower end machines. And we now have quick encounters for all of these different areas. So there's a group of lounging vampire spawn that you can make either hostile or neutral to the party. Yeah, there's not a lot of changes to level 4. You'll notice that there's now a roof to this northmost tower and there's some gargoyles on it, and those kind of come into play with this nice gargoyle encounter. So we can have gargoyles attack the players, and you'll notice there's this big box around it. So this is actually another multi-level token zone that will kind of clone the tokens so that if someone does come up to the roof of the heart tower, as we're calling it, that they can look down and see the enemies here. And if they jump off the heart tower, it'll take them right down. I've added in a way to go down the chimney to get into the lounge, though that might be a little hot for you if you have not put out the fire yet. So here, this is another version of the north tower, like the shaft that goes all the way through the tower. And it talks about the bats and everything again, and you can activate the quick encounter here to have more vampire spawn attack the party. One of the important things to note is that this shaft, it is a nice one-way ticket down into the lowest level of the castle. And so that is a 300-foot drop for your players. If you don't want that to happen, and there's a few other traps like this that happen automatically that the notes will tell you about it, but if you don't want those to go off automatically, like say you're in the middle of combat and stuff gets sloppy there, you can go into the multi-level and you can just click this disable region button and update the drawing, and then it will be disabled until you re-enable it. That also works if your players have some way to either climb up or down or fly down.
Definitely good to know.
Yeah, so again, definitely want to read through some of these whenever you're first running the map. But back down in the first level of the basement, we have this really nice big open room. And again, kind of going with my theme of interesting combat encounters, something I really wanted to incorporate was just these interesting like experiences and maybe not necessarily combat encounters. So I kind of have people arrayed as if they're sitting at tables. And so maybe your players can avoid going through the tables, and maybe these ghosts continue having the feast that they died during. Or maybe they just attack the party on site. So lots of other cool encounters there. And I really like the fog effect in this room. I think it really lends itself to having like a spooky vibe, especially with the blue of the ghosts. And we've got these haunting kitchens, which is a really interesting contrast, I realized, between the rooms on the first floor that lead to this point. They're all really dusty and dirty and don't look like anyone's been there in forever. So I kind of wanted to play up that contrast a little more and be extra startling. So here we have an encounter with a green hag and her cockatrices. So they're all hanging out in here, perhaps waiting for you to get done with the ghosts before knocking on their door. So kind of playing up just how strikingly different that is. So in here we have like a bit of a hoarder's quarters that Baileywiki put together here. Lots of great attention to detail as always. So.
Yeah, we set up those banners on the side so you could really hide things or players underneath this wall decor. I think it works.
Yeah, so we can't show you here right now, but we're working on a macro that should be ready for release that you'll have just like the Brazier room. There'll be a journal entry that you can click on here that'll have a macro that'll let you turn the trap on and off. And what it will do is just disable both of the multi-level token zones associated with the trap. And you can just turn them back on when you're ready. And that works if they've already sprung the trap, or if you just don't want to use the trap, or if you want to delay it. So the lower levels, we've got the Buttery here that you put together. There's a lock room over here. We can kind of see how things interconnect with this giant windy place. We're back in the Hall of Bones. And if we go through here, we have another quick encounter with kind of the moldering corpses of the guards that were killed here as well. And we can go up into the Armory. And this one is another one of Abominable Rob's creations. What I thought would be cool here is, who comes into an armory? What adventure comes into an armory and doesn't start looking around and see if there's good stuff in here, right? And so something I thought would be really fun in this particular encounter is to have flying swords, and some of the flavor text here talks about that. Of like, okay, you might think some of the equipment's nice and you go to pick it up and all of a sudden starts humming and turns blue and starts swinging at you. Okay, so I thought that would be fun. And then I really liked the dust methods. I just like the idea of these little dust devils hiding in dirty places. So I wanted to have them kind of reprise their role from the art storage, and they'll pop out if the swords start swinging and stuff as you've disturbed their home and try and get you to leave.
That's great. And this really is a great room by Rob. I encourage everyone to zoom in when they get a chance and look at the level of detail. It's pretty outstanding.
Yeah. Just more of what we've come to expect from him, especially with that cluttered general store he put up for the community contest and everything. It's just great work, as always. And then he also has a clean version of this that looks just as good.
That's right. Yeah. So useful.
And I think this pretty much covers all of the new content that's in the castle itself. And again, these are all nice and fully interconnected. We've got all of our multi-level token zones that run through the whole of the castle. You can run around everywhere now. You might not want your players to do that, so you can swap the notes around as you need. But again, this will all come in with all the notes preserved. If you've got Scene Packer, bring all the macros you need, all the quick encounters. The quick encounters do only work if you've got D&D 5e, as they use the 5e systems compendium to be able to power those encounters. But those are available to everyone using 5e, and that's kind of the state of the castle right now.
So one thing that I did do is I took a lot of my ships and I created multi-level versions of them. So you've got the frigate, the dark and the light version, same as the galleon. I even actually created some no cannon versions, which people have been asking for forever. But people who don't want cannons on their ships, there's versions where you can put a ballista and things like that. And then there's also the airship. But these are really complex prefabs using levels. I don't recommend that people just make these things. It just takes a long time to engineer these. But I do have a video that just came out that walks through how these things work. But you can essentially have combat across the entire ship, and you can go all the way down into these lower levels. You can drop the ship on any map, and and it'll work. But if I go down into these levels below, you guys have seen this ship before, but I've got sort of new functionality where you can actually to have one-way elevators and stuff like that. But this just lets you create your bases, let your players run around and do things. I mean, the airship same kind of treatment, the frigates, everything else. So you can really take your bases with you, and I just think they're delightful. And the fact that they work with combat, I can have enemies out here in the sky. I can be on different. You're looking at 3 different elevations just right here, and to be able to fight across all those elevations, you can do parallaxia, as you've seen before with the tile underneath, so you can have these battles be moving battles. So I'm excited to deploy these and let other people play around with them. Now these are in alpha experimental mode, right? There's a lot of complexity with the modules that are made to create these. So, whether there's walls or elevations or things don't quite work right for gameplay, I'm looking for feedback to kind of develop these a little bit further. But these are pretty usable the way they're at now. It's been a lot of testing that's gone into them already. So I'm excited to see how people use these. And just some of the new rooms that are deployed here, you can see the clean version of this room is here. And I also, the granary, which you guys have seen before, is now level supported. So this is, it's just 3 levels with this granary. And now you can go inside the granary, you can put combat encounters in there, you can have it lead to something underneath it. But just new things that are available to us now that Ripper has come out with levels and better roofs. So with that, that's really the walkthrough of all the new materials. I will point out that there's also inside the Baileywiki Castle playlist, which is in your compendiums, you have all the music that you had before, but you also now have a battle theme. And so the battle theme I've likely played for you in the demo leading up to this, but definitely encourage you guys to come in here. And if you really want some ambiance music that was really made for this castle, you've got all of that, and you'll have we'll be adding some more here over time as well. So keep an eye out for that. But that's it. Zephyr, thanks for a great release. This took a ton of work from 3 different artists working around the clock to make this entire castle work, and then all of the alternative rooms to it, to be able to completely redesign, reconfigure everything that we saw in here. So, thanks for all the hard work, and appreciate everybody with their inputs getting us here. And definitely let us know if you've got ideas. We're going to be doing a contest for our community members to build alternatives to all of these rooms. So the goal is to give you more and more options and content when it comes to this modular castle, so that you can continue to build whatever stories that you guys want to tell. So thanks again, Zephyr, and thanks everybody else, and have fun making your maps, guys.